Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible legal puzzles you can imagine, straight from the minds of the ancient rabbis. We're talking about the law of intent. So, picture this. You're a priest in the ancient temple in Jerusalem. The air is thick with incense, prayers are echoing all around you, and you are right in the middle of performing a sacred sacrifice. But then, for just a split second, the wrong thought flashes through your mind. Does that one tiny mental slip-up ruin the entire thing? You know, for the scholars of the Talmud, this wasn't just some abstract what-if scenario. No, this was a serious legal problem. They treated the Bible like a divine legal code. And just like master detectives, they were going to hunt down the textual proof for every single detail of the law. Okay, so let's get right into it. The first big question is all about intent. Now, to really follow their investigation, you got to know the basic procedure. There are 4 main physical steps in a sacrifice. You slaughter the animal, you collect its blood in a special vessel, you carry that vessel over to the altar, and finally, you sprinkle the blood on the altar. Just keep those 4 steps in your head. So here's the first puzzle. Where in the Bible does it actually say that your intention has to be perfect during that first step, the slaughter? I mean, it's not written out like an instruction manual. The rabbis had to find the proof hidden somewhere inside the text itself. And that search leads them to their very first piece of evidence. They zero in on this verse in Leviticus. Now, on the surface, it seems pretty straightforward. But the rabbis, well, they notice something incredibly subtle about the language being used. And here's the clue. It is a brilliant bit of linguistic detective work. In Hebrew, the word for a sacrifice, which is zevah, sounds almost exactly like the word for slaughter, which is zavicha. So the rabbis argued that the text was doing this on purpose, creating a direct link. The act of slaughter has to be done with the specific intent for it to be a peace offering. It's just a classic, amazing piece of textual deduction. But, and this is what makes the Talmud so cool, it immediately starts arguing with itself. The Gemara basically says, whoa, hold on a second. Maybe the phrase, a sacrifice of peace offerings is just, the name of the offering. Maybe it has nothing to do with your thoughts at all. They absolutely refuse to settle for an easy answer. So how do they solve it? They cross-reference. They find other verses that also talk about peace offerings, but, and this is key, they don't use that specific word, zevach. That means its inclusion in this first verse can't be an accident. It has to be there for a reason, and that reason is to teach us about the intent needed during the slaughter. Boom. Case closed on step 1. But you can't just take that logic and apply it to the other 3 steps. And this brings us to the very engine of Talmudic argument, the art of refutation. The rule of the game is simple, but it is incredibly demanding. You are not allowed to generalize a rule from one case to another. Just because you proved something for the act of slaughtering, you can't just assume it applies to collecting the blood or sprinkling it. And why not? Because each of those actions might have some unique legal quality that makes it totally different. For example, the rabbis point out that the act of slaughter has a very specific rule related to the Passover sacrifice that the other ritual steps just don't have. And since it's different in that one way, you can't assume it's the same in all the other ways. This forces them to go all the way back to the text and find a separate piece of proof for every single step. And that is exactly what they do. The text we're looking at shows this incredible, intense back and forth for collecting the blood, for conveying it, and for sprinkling it. For each step, a proof is brought forward, then it's challenged, and then a brand new specific verse has to be found to make the case. It's a total masterclass in logical rigor. Now, just when you think the case might be solved, the rabbis throw in a whole new layer of complexity. What if the mistake isn't about the type of offering, but about who it's for, the owner? So now we've got 2 different kinds of potential mistakes. The first one, which we've been talking about, is, let's say, offering a sin offering while thinking it's a peace offering. But the second one is, what if you're offering a sacrifice that belongs to person A, but in your head you're thinking it's for person B? Is that also a problem? Yep, you guessed it. The whole entire investigative process starts all over again. They find a new proof for this wrong owner rule, but of course, that proof is immediately challenged. They can't just borrow the logic from the wrong offerings case because, you got it, the rules of refutation kick in, pointing out all the unique differences between the 2 scenarios. At this point, the whole argument is this incredibly complex web of proofs and counterproofs. It seems almost hopelessly tangled. But then, the rabbis find the one verse that ties it all together. And here it is, the final breakthrough. This one verse from Leviticus, it acts like a master key to the whole puzzle.
Okay, so here's the final beautiful leap of logic. By listing all the major offerings together in one sentence and then ending that list with the peace offering, the verse creates this incredibly powerful link. And remember, the rabbis had already gone through all that painstaking work to prove the rules of intent for the peace offering. So this verse basically acts as a bridge, letting them apply all those same rules across the board to every offering. And just like that, the entire case is solved.
But, knowing the law is one thing, the practical consequences, that's another. And this is where the Talmud delivers its final and really surprising twist. So, after all of that incredible intellectual heavy lifting to prove that your intent has to be just right, what actually happens if a priest messes up? Is the sacrifice totally worthless? Is the animal just wasted? And the answer, incredibly, is no. The offering isn't thrown out. Instead, it's still considered valid, but it kind of gets downgraded. So here's the crucial distinction. If the offering was meant to fulfill a specific vow, like an obligation you had, well, that obligation is not met. You'd have to bring another animal. However, the animal itself isn't rejected. God still accepts it, but as a voluntary gift. It's this incredibly pragmatic and compassionate ruling, showing that even inside this perfectly logical, airtight system, there's still room for human error. A single thought can change the legal status of a sacred act, but it can't completely erase its value.